Whiteline Fever live, and if you're watching on YouTube, I always got to remember, like, subscribe, and hit the little bell down the bottom there. And if you're listening on the podcast, welcome back to Whiteline Fever. And my next guest is, I guess I first saw this band live about 10 years ago, and we finally got him on the program. I think it's been about 4 years since their last record. From Reckless Love, Olli Herman. How are you, Olli?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having us, or having me on the show. It's been actually
it's Friday night. Sorry.
Yeah, it's actually been 6 years since the last record, so it's been a while.
It has been a long while, and there's so much to unpack about this one. And it's called Turborider, and maybe this is a coincidence, but Turbo and Turbo Lover marked a very big change of direction for Judas Priest, and it kind of polarized their fans a little bit. And this record's quite different. Is that a coincidence?
Well, not really. Turbo, the album Turbo by Judas Priest is probably my favorite of Judas Priest albums. Painkiller also, but yeah, Turbo is definitely up there. I think it's either Painkiller or Turbo. And I've always been really, really, really inspired by that album. Same thing with the Van Halen 5150, which is a pretty synth-heavy type of album compared to the other ones. Well, of course, there was Jump on 1984. But yeah, I'm kind of like inspired by that era quite a bit. So there's definitely a connection there between the Turbo and Turborider album.
And the kind of quantum leap aspect of it musically, and the fact that, it might take a bit of adjustment from some of your fans, which also those albums did for those bands you just mentioned,
Yeah, kind of. I mean, for me, it's not that big of a leap because, we've kind of like toyed with that type of sound throughout our careers. Even on the first record, we had a song called Back to Paradise, which featured that kind of synth, kind of like sequenced synth rhythm and the electric drums. And, pretty much just on each of our records, there are that type of sounds on one or maybe a few songs on the record. Even on Invader, the previous album, there's Scandinavian Girls and Child of the Sun, which pretty much has no guitars at all. So, it's always been there. And the stylistic change from within the band, obviously from our point of view, it's not that big. It's kind of like we've just turned those influences or that side of Reckless Love up to 11. We've kind of amplified that influence in there.
Yeah, and bands like Night Flight Orchestra are very successful, aren't they? And they've certainly got a crossover following, not so much with just kind of the metal fans and the Van Halen fans, but also, people who like Fleetwood Mac or people who like, Cyndi Lauper. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Is that kind of the kind of audience that that you think you can engage with this sort of development? This sort of, you say it's not a change, but evolution in your sound.
Well, I hope so. When we wrote the album, we didn't really think of that because it was a very natural process. So it kind of like it was the obvious place where our music. It felt like it had to evolve into this direction. And, we always knew that 6 years is a big, it's a long break. So I always knew that there's going to be something different in us, when we get into the studio, and it remains to be seen what it is. And I had kind of like found this new genre called synthwave, which kind of reminded me of the exact music that you mentioned about. And I had, it has the common ground with the Van Halen 5150 type of sounds and the Judas Priest Turbo album. And that's kind of like something that I wanted to incorporate into our music way more than because we had already toyed with it. So that's pretty much like, that's why it came really naturally. And of course, we didn't want to do something that was already done like 40 years ago all over again. We needed to, give it a little modern twist. So we ended up kind of like incorporating those synthwave elements into it. And synthwave is a pretty far cry from pop music. It's mostly instrumental type of music, and we didn't really think of any kind of crossover things when we were doing it. But afterwards, because I mean, on paper it sounded like a really crazy idea. It sounded like an ultimate 80s type of thing, and that kind of suited us because we are heavily influenced by the 80s sounds. But you know, the end result, kind of like when we got the songs ready and we had it recorded, we kind of like started thinking that, wow, there might be a possibility of a little crossover for, you know, to maybe raise some interest in another type of listener who hasn't listened to us before.
Yeah, you might be able to discern from my accent where I'm from. I'm Australian, and this story kind of like Australia plays a role in this story, doesn't it? Because it was supposed to be the start of a giant world tour.
Yeah.
And thanks to the pandemic, you didn't get much further than Australia.
Yeah, pretty much. So I mean, we hadn't even published all of the dates for the 2020 10th anniversary tour of our first record. But yeah, we were supposed to go from Australia. We were supposed to go to Japan. After that, we were supposedly, you know, we should, you know, come back to Finland. And that was our goal, to tour whole of Finland, do the summer festivals, do European tour during the fall, go to Latin America, pretty much tour the whole world. It was the biggest tour of our, you know, career. So that, you know, up until that point. But as you mentioned, yeah, COVID and Australia, those were the only things that I pretty much remember from 2020.
So what happened? Were you stranded there, or did you just get home in time, or what happened?
Well, we cut it short and we flew back home. And yeah, after we got back home, it was not, I think it was a week and the whole world was pretty much closed. Finland was in total lockdown. Everything was canceled and postponed until, you know, well, I remember thinking that maybe it'll only take a few months, but here we are 2 years later, still postponing tours. So it sucks, but you know, what can it do? It's nothing that we can actually like. You know, at this point, I suspect that the virus has diluted itself into a milder version. So I mean, people, you know, my gut feeling is that people would want to go into the shows. People are not that afraid of the virus anymore, and I think it's just the government restrictions that are, you know, pretty much holding the tours back right now. It's impossible to pull off a European tour as we speak, because there's so many different kind of restrictions going on in Europe. There's so much of uncertainty in the business, so that you know, we just had to make a decision about the European tour. If we would have gone on tour and somebody would have, you know, it's a 14 people crew, so somebody's bound to get the Omicron because it's highly contagious. So if somebody gets it, the tour stops there, and that's something that we cannot afford. So it had to be postponed until September.
Yeah, and I just wondered, is it possible to actually, for anyone, much less a band, to pick up exactly where they left off before the pandemic? You know, because obviously, and you've touched on this in other interviews, that we've all lost people during this period, and I guess we've all grown up a little bit during this period. And I mean, you can't be exactly the same band you were beforehand, can you? And I know you've got a song, Eyes of a Maniac, which is kind of partly, you know, inspired by your friend Alexi. Can you just speak to us a little bit about that, about the impact that I guess this period has had on everybody and on yourself?
I mean, yeah, actually, I didn't even realize it back in 2020 when all of this started, how much of an impact it has on people, and especially on myself. I mean, when I think of it, the first part of 2021 was probably the darkest period of the past 2 years, because yeah, as you mentioned, I lost a good friend, practically like a big he felt like a big brother, like an older brother for me. And of course it's kind of like, it's very depressing to just, you know, just to keep postponing things and just sit at home. You cannot work because your work is basically completely banned during this time. So it was really heavy mentally. I think I was a bit depressed during the first few months of 2021. So naturally, it had an impact on the lyrics and the mood of the music that we did, because I think we all felt the same, especially me and my creative partner Pepe, who pretty much does all of the music with and we wrote pretty much the whole album with the producer Jonas. So I think we all kind of like lived through that type of thing, and we all knew Alexei, so it definitely had an impact on us. And yeah, it's weird. I mean, you kind of like feel like the same person, but it's kind of like I created the whole character of Turborider for the album after reading an interview by Rob Halford. He was talking about Painkiller, and he was talking about this imagining a character that he imagined that depicts the album. Basically, it's Judas Priest and the music. It's a savior, comes from out the skies. It's this metal god that comes and saves people. And I felt like, yeah, that's such a cool story. I've never done anything like kind of like just like imagined it. It's pretty much all straight out of my own life, like real events. And I decided that that's such a cool analogy. I want to do something similar. And I came to think of, because I didn't want to do I wanted something that would emulate that. So I came to think of a little girl, and I kind of like thought of myself, what did I feel when I was a kid? Okay, what did I have? What was interesting? And because of the dark period of the past 2 years, it didn't come out as a savior. It was like kind of like a killer kind of type of thing. It was an evil twin or an evil sister of Painkiller, basically. And yeah, that's how it all came about. And it was like it's a representation or a metaphor for the music. How it's still the same. It's got the inner child that we all carry around with us, but it has gone to hell and gone to hell and back. And there's plenty of scars that she carries around with her.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that, you can kind of hear it.
Yeah. Because I mean, you guys and other bands as well. Your age, be it Airborne or Crazy Licks or any of these bands, you have the great opportunity to actually still live if you want to. You got your youth and your health, and you can actually kind of live like David Lee Roth, or maybe with a smaller expense account if you want to.
Yeah.
And I guess. But there's a limit to that, isn't there? There's an expiry date on that sort of thing, and you either choose to kind of follow the lifestyle or you choose to kind of follow the art and try to be a bit more professional. I got no idea. I'm not casting any aspersions on yourself or what you choose to do in your spare time, but is that part of like is that part of this period and part of growth? Sort of coming to that realization that life's not a party all the time.
Yeah, definitely. That's what Eyes of a Maniac is all about. I mean, the blessing that this pandemic brought with it, and the 2-year period that we just had to sit tight and stay at home, it was basically it's a wake up call. And yeah, I've had plenty of those experiences because being on tour is kind of like working at a party every night, because it literally is. We go from city to city, from and there's always a party at every city. The guys at the audience from the previous city, they're at home resting suffering through the hangover, and we're there in a new party. And that kind of like kept on going for a decade for us, basically, or 8 years straight. And of course, naturally, you get tired of it at times, and then you just kind of like get really enthusiastic about it afterwards. And yeah, it takes a toll on you, and you kind of like learn to live with it. But then the creepiest part is that sometimes you realize that you're, Eyes of a Maniac, for me, it's kind of like this inner demon. I love partying. I love having a good time. Who doesn't? But it can turn against you. And there's these moments, these flashes of, I remember from being at a party, and actually the eyes of a maniac in the mirror. I had this really visual image of going into the toilet of a bar and just basically just like leaning on to the sink and looking at myself in the mirror, and all I see is the eyes of a maniac. I mean, that this is not good for you, dude.
Yeah. So
but I mean,
sorry.
yeah, but it's all about inner demons. So it's I don't want to talk too much about it, what it is for me, because it's also other things. There's other inner demons. Everybody's got some of the demons that you carry with you everywhere, and you cannot escape them. You just have to face them, and you have to learn to live with them.
Ollie, lots of interesting stuff happening. Peacemaker, the hit TV show, has a Reckless Love song in it. And I noticed it's like now on Spotify, it's going up. It's like your number 2, probably be your number 1 song soon.
Yeah.
How does that happen? And B, what impact does it have on you?
I have no idea how James Gunn actually found out about us or about the song, but I think it was something like a year ago that we got a message from his production company that he wants to use it in a series called Peacemaker. The show is going to be on HBO, and this is the deal that they're proposing. And he definitely wants to use this particular song. Great. That's already like we were high-fiving each other. Jesus Christ, this is crazy. We're going to get, this is a huge break for us. Awesome. We didn't even care. Is it going to be like a really good show? Is it going to be a bad show? I mean, that was already kind of like huge. And, of course, it's flattering that somebody wants to use your own, handiwork, your original song. But yeah, when they started airing the show, it turned out to be like the most streamed show on earth at the moment. It's massively popular. It's insane. I started to watch the show, and it's actually, I laugh out loud during, watching the show, and kind of like brings tears to my eyes as well. It's brilliant. It's truly a magnificent show, and I'm really proud to be part of it. And the song that it fits the scene perfectly. It was better than we could have hoped for. I mean, it's unreal.
Wow, that's congratulations.
Thank you very much.
About 11 years ago, I went and saw a number of shows here in the UK. I was still in Australia at the time, and I was sort of coming over and back, and it was Motley Crue, Def Leppard, and Steel Panther. And Steel Panther one night said, we've been told that if you don't cheer loud, they're going to kick us off the tour and replace us with Reckless Love. Michael Starr said that. And it occurs to me at the time that at that time you were the band, like you were the darkness of that year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe this year it's Dirty Honey or someone like that. I don't know, What I wonder, is there pressure associated with being the great white hope at any given time of rock music? Were you aware of it at the time? The people thought rock's coming back, yeah. And every year someone is the great white knight who's going to bring it back. And for 12 months it was you. What was that like? Did you feel the pressure?
I didn't. I didn't actually, and it's a good thing. I didn't realize it myself. So if I would have realized it, I probably might have felt the pressure. But I'm glad I didn't realize it back then. Sure, I noticed that some incredible things are happening, and it was like, what year was that? 2011?
I guess 2011, yeah, 2012, yeah.
So that was right after the debut album. And we had pretty much, in 2011 was the year that we actually went to LA and shot a music video for Hot. And Michael Starr actually, we exchanged a few messages on Twitter, and he asked us to come to the House of Blues show. And I told him that, yeah, we're coming, but we can't make it in time, so we're going to come in late. And, it's...
I was there that
it's great to see.
I interviewed them before that show, I think. So,
all right.
Sorry, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, we walked in, and suddenly it felt like, I'm not sure, was it like in between the songs, but we just came in, or did they actually stop the song? But once we came in, a spotlight turned on to the entrance, and and Michael Starr went, "Dude, Cinderella is here," and Satchel answered, "That's a lot of facelifts, man." And then they actually, all right, we're kidding, it's Reckless Love. These guys come on stage, and we played Panama together. It's unreal. I mean, I still, you know, kind of like cherish those memories. But that made me think of that. Wow, this is, you know, there's actually some great stuff happening. This is going to be huge.
Yeah, and now, but you must feel a bit free of that now because the world's moved on, and as I said, you're sort of you're sort of whatever the expression is, furrowing your own path now, aren't you? Particularly with this record, where you're not trying to be, you know, you don't have that responsibility of being the saviors of rock now. You just got to do what you want to do and what you find fun, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, kind of. I still don't think of it that way. I mean, it's kind of like, it's funny how I'm completely kind of like concentrated. I've always been like that. I mean, back then, I just remember mainly thinking about the new album and how it should sound and what should we do next with it. And so many years after that, I just never stopped and thought about it. I just like kept concentrating on the next thing, next move, what we're gonna do next, and what do I want to do next. And it was kind of like all those feelings and all those kind of like realizations. There were like glimpses or blink of an eye, in, you know, here and there. That okay, we're still doing this. I mean, because at first it was just a dream come true. Okay, we're gonna do an album. This is a dream come true. It isn't gonna last long. Okay, maybe we're gonna do another album. Holy shit, we are. Okay, we're doing another album. It sold gold. Wow, holy hell. It's the third album. Okay, I want to do this. I want to do this. And it all went by so fast. So pretty much actually 4-year period, because after Invader, we toured for 2 years straight. And that was the biggest tour so far. And after that, we kind of like stopped for a while, especially our guitarist Pepe, who, you know, and everybody else in the band, they had family. So they started talking about maybe spending some time at home, because we're always on tour. Then we're going back into the studio and back out on the road again. So it felt like, or they felt like they were missing out. Because, yeah, I remember times from on the road that the guys were FaceTiming at home, and, you know, the folks at home, that you missed your daughter's first word, you missed your son's first steps, and we're on in tour bus somewhere. So that's kind of heavy. It's not the easiest thing to, you know, to kind of like process. But still, we did it for 8 years. So it was kind of like, okay, maybe we should take a little break.
Yeah.
And that was the first time we actually kind of stopped and thought about things. But then in 2020, that was supposed to be, you know, back in the saddle. Let's do the same thing all over again. And we didn't even think of it. I mean, we just like kept on going. And we've been very lucky that people have actually wanted to see us for this long. People still want to see us, and they want to hear us. They want to come and see our show. That's we count ourselves somewhat blessed. You know, use the hashtag. But anyway.